some of you might have seen this chart, the top 500 chart, how we have been doing over the several years. And in the November ranking, this was the K supercomputer, which was like 8 petaflop, and later they again improved to 10 petaflops. So we are around that place. And then there is a plan to have 20 to 30 petaflops in 2013, and then 100 petaflops in 2016, and then to have an exaflop system in 2019. So that is the kind of rough target people are working on. Now in that kind of a context, if you see, over the years, the clusters are taking a very big role in designing this top 500 system. So here I have put a chart starting from November 1996. If you see, there are only 0 clusters in the top 500, but over the years, it has come almost to like hovering around like 82, 83, 84%. Okay? So that means clusters are becoming a very significant component in these top 500 systems. Then from those clusters, again, we know there are different kinds of networking technologies, and one of the important one is InfiniBand, and that has been growing almost for the last 10 to 12 years. And in the November list, we have around 209 IB clusters, which captures around 41% of the of all the clusters. And not just the percentage, but if you see these numbers, like this is the largest one with 120,000 cores, 73,000, 111,000, 138,000 kind of things. So these clusters are becoming very easy to deploy now. Not only the technology has matured, but multi-core technology has come. Then I'll also be talking a little bit about the Open Fabrics software stack, which some of you might be familiar, called OFED. So you just have the systems, deploy the OFED, and very soon, in few weeks, you have the complete system running. Okay? So that is allowing a lot of power to deploy these kind of commodity clusters and get a lot of performance out. So now the question is like, what are these machines being used for? Of course, most of us know that this is the traditional scientific computing, like the message passing is the dominant programming model. And people have been doing a lot of discussion on partition global address space. And I'll also touch a little bit of those towards the end. And Mr. Gilad Berman gave a lot of background on those kind of things. And
I'm just proud you know my name.
Thank you. So the other kind of thing is the enterprise and computing environments, or the commercial computing or cloud computing. That is the next generation environments which are coming. And this focuses on large data analytics, like Hadoop, HDFS, HBase, MapReduce, all those kinds of environments are there, but mostly they're running on GIGI. Okay, and I'll try to actually show some numbers. We have been working on the research. Can we really take advantage of InfiniBand? Can we design all these kinds of things on the native IB verse? And what kind of performance we can get? Okay, so I'll try to address both these things, and we'll show that that's the kind of direction we want to move forward to design these next generation libraries. So to give a very big perspective, like let's say how do we design these software libraries, let's start with what do we get? Like these are like commodity computing systems, and these days also like the Intel Mic is coming, which is many core architectures, GPUs from NVIDIA. Then we have all the networking technologies. And then from the top, we have the applications or the libraries. Okay? So somehow we need to take the performance from these layers and need to deliver there. Okay? That is the big challenge. But then if you see how the applications and libraries are written, typically there are some programming models. Okay? It could be like for scientific computing, it could be MPI, or it could be like PGAS, UPC, global arrays. Or if you're talking about cloud computing, it could be Hadoop or MapReduce. Okay? So the problem now reduces to taking the power here and then trying to deliver it to the programming models. And if we can do that, then the programmers who are writing the programs should be able to take advantage of these modern technologies. So then if we go inside, then we'll see a lot of these components which are there in designing this library. That means first we need to provide very best point-to-point communication. We also need to have collective communication. Rich talked about that. I'll also talk about that a little bit more. Synchronization and logs, I/O and file system, quality of service, fault tolerance. So these are the different components inside the library, and we need to design these in a very high performance, scalable, and fault tolerant manner. Okay, so that is the big challenge we have to work on. So to have like a list of items, if we want to design this, let's say from a scientific computing angle, we call MPI plus X model. So where X could be any of the PGAS, people still don't know what is that X. It could be UPC, it could be global array, or it could be X10. Over the years, we'll find out. Or it could be even simple CUDA. Nobody knows. So here, the idea is that we need to provide the scalability for million to billion processors. So that means we need to have very highly efficient inter-node and intra-node communication. And at the same time, we need to have extremely minimum memory footprint. So that I'll touch a little bit. As the systems are becoming very big and big, now if the library takes a significant amount of memory, then you are taking that memory out from the applications, and that is no good. Then of course the hybrid programming we need to support, and then also you need to have some kind of a balancing intra-node and inter-node communication. So these days with multi-core, like let's say AMD, these days you get a node with 4 of those 16 core sockets, so like 64 cores per node. Very soon we'll have 256,000. So how do they communicate out? The network becomes the bottleneck. Okay, so do you need only one card, or do you need more cards? So there has to be some kind of a concepts like multiple endpoints per node you need to have. Then the question is, these are multi-core environments, so you need to have some kind of a good support for multi-threading. And then also we need some good support for all these GPUs and the Intel Mic architectures, which are coming like the accelerators. And the other big issue is the collective communication, and I'll spend a lot of time on that. So these are not just purely for performance, but how do we take advantage of the offload, how do we design non-blocking, but also I'll be focusing on 2 additional concepts called topology aware and power aware. Okay, so I'll show some results. And then fault tolerance, resiliency, QoS support, communication, and I/O. So these are all the kind of big challenges which are lying in front of us, and we need to resolve all these things if we can design the exascale systems in the 2019. So in this context, we have been like working on this software. Some of you might be familiar, like MRAPIC and MRAPIC 2. We have been working for last 12 years since the beginning of InfiniBand. And we started with InfiniBand, and then after that it has been enabled for the 10 gig IOR, as well as for the Rocky. Excuse me. So it supports both MPI 1 and MPI 2.2, and as the MPI 3 standardization is coming, we are an active member of the MPI 3 forum, so we are also looking at all those developments. So all those features will be coming to MRAPIC 2 stack very soon. And currently it is used by more than 1,840 organizations in 65 countries, and you can download from OSU site, as well as it is available from the OFED. And it also enables a lot of top 500 clusters, like starting from the 5th ranked, 7th ranked, 25th ranked kind of systems use our software in a very production environment. We are also a partner in this system. I don't know if some of you are familiar, like the NSF TAC Stampede system, which is coming. It will be deployed towards the end of this year. It will have actually the Intel Mic architecture there, so we are a partner there to design this 10 to 15 petaflop system. So now based on the time, I'll just try to touch some of these issues. I'll not have time to touch all the issues. So I'll start with the simple, like high performance and scalable inter-node communication with some hybrid transport. Okay. So let's start with the point-to-point communication. So here are some numbers which shows how over the years, like both Mellanox and the QLogic, of course the QLogic has been acquired now by Intel, has been doing in terms of performance. Like this is the DDR, QDR, it is the same MRAPIC stack. And here you can see like the QDR, which is delivering around 1.56 microsecond latency. I don't have the FDR numbers yet. I'll be trying to put those soon. And the FDR numbers are actually converging to 1 microsecond or a little bit even lower. Okay, so now in fact, we are trying to cross that 1 microsecond MPI barrier with the FDR and the new Sandy Bridge architecture. So not only this is the latency, the bandwidth nowadays, we get like a unidirectional bandwidth of very close to 3.4 gigabytes per second, and bidirectional will be 6.5, and with the FDR architecture, again, that will be getting pushed out. So continuously, like these latencies and bandwidth are improving, but this is only point to point. When you are designing a 100 million core system, yes, point to point matters, but at the same time, globally also it matters how best you do the communication. So here, InfiniBand, as you know, like they provide different kinds of transport services, RC, UD, these are mostly the common. And then there was an extended reliable connection, or XRC, which was introduced a few years back for multi-core environments. Now what happens is this RC and UD, if some of you are familiar, they have different characteristics. Okay? So RC is good, it is a reliable connection, it provides you everything in the reliability, but you have to establish a connection. So now think of a very large number of cores in a system. Those number of connections you establish, that actually not only takes more memory, it may also degrade your performance. Okay? On the other hand, the unreliable datagram, it's actually an unreliable datagram. As the name suggests, it is not reliable. So that means all the packets cannot be guaranteed to be delivered, but it has very good performance and scalability. So here we have some numbers. Here it says like the memory footprint wise, RC, the numbers keeps on rising, and the UD remains almost constant. And here we did a study on the Lawrence Livermore system with 4,000 cores, and here you will see that in the end, actually the UD performs better. Okay? Even though we add the reliability, but InfiniBand network we have seen very few packet drops happen. So if you design the things properly, in fact you can gain much more in the performance. So we try to combine it together. Okay? It is like a hybrid car. These days we design saying, okay, you won't need to have a good balance between gas and electric. So here we did the similar kind of thing to have a hybrid design between UD and RC or XRC. So there are different thumb rules in the way you can design this. I'll not go into details, but here if you see, these are like different benchmarks, and here you will see this hybrid number, which is the red, which always does equal or better than UD and RC. Okay? And in that way, it tries to deliver you the best performance, but with a very reduced memory footprint. So this is the scheme we had in our MIPICH 1 series for quite some time, but it was a separate interface. And in the MIPICH 2, starting from the 1.7 series, we actually integrated together. So it is available for almost 1 year. A lot of people use it for very large scale system. If you have not used that, please use, and you will see that you will get the good performance as well as the memory footprint will go down. So the idea here is that, excuse me, as we go to these exascale systems, we need to have these kinds of solutions. Okay? So we need to think like not just the pure point-to-point performance, but as a whole, as a system, can we really try to deliver the performance with the reduced memory footprint? Now that is only point-to-point outside, but now what is also happening, you need to optimize within the node because of these multi-cores are coming. As I mentioned, like these days 64 cores are there, very soon we'll have 256,024 cores. A lot of communications happen within the node. And how do we take advantage of that? How do we optimize it? So here, once again, like over the years, we have been continuously trying to optimize, and last week we made a release, and these are the numbers, like the MIPICH to 1.82. So this is on the Intel Westmere. So here you can see 190 nanoseconds. We can actually do MPI communication core to core within the socket. So that's what we call like an intra-socket. If it is inter-socket, so we go to around 450 nanoseconds. Okay? So with this kind of like performance, we continuously come up with better and better designs to have like the within the node trying to optimize the performance, because that's what leads to the end application performance. Now in addition to the small messages, for the large messages, we have been also working on kernel-based solutions. So typically these kind of solutions, shared memory, the sender actually puts into a buffer and the receiver reads it, so there are 2 copies. Whereas if you do some kernel-based solution, and we have a solution called Limbic, some of you are familiar, it is actually single copy. Okay, so that means from the sender's address, you can actually map it to the receiver address, and then with 1 copy, you can get the data moved. And here you will see that we are able to give very high bandwidth with this kernel-based solution. So what I meant to show here through these kind of numbers, that we also need to look at not just the outside the node, but also with the node, within the node, and come up with better and better solution as the technology or the multi-core technology improves. Any questions so far? Everybody is awake? Okay. Any quick questions? So now let's move to the next one. So here let's say the point-to-point. So what are the issues in collective communication? And Rich gave a lot of background on that, so I don't want to go into all those details, but I'll try to show some 3 or 4 directions, like multi-core aware, topology aware, power aware, and then exploiting the collective aware. So multi-core aware. So that means, as I mentioned, like the nodes are becoming more fatter. So when you design the collective operations, you need to take this hierarchy into account, because a lot of communication happens within the node. For example, you are trying to design a broadcast algorithm. Okay? If you think every process is separate, then there is a lot of communication happening. But if you think that within the node, if I get a copy, others can very quickly copy using the shared memory technique I discussed earlier. So in that way, your broadcast can be done much more faster. And this is, we call it like a shared memory aware or multi-core aware algorithms. And we have been doing that for quite some time. So these are some numbers from the TAC Ranger. So you can see on a 4,000 core system, you significantly improve from a naive algorithm to the shared memory aware algorithm. So, and as the technology is improving, with every release, we actually tune all these our algorithms so that they try to deliver the best performance on all modern systems. But this is something totally new. Excuse me, we have been working for the last several years, called topology aware. So what does that mean? So no matter, let's say you optimize your algorithms, collective algorithm in the best possible manner, but it's always static. Okay, like in your library, you have put those algorithms. But what happens on real systems? So here I'll show some example. Let's say on a very large scale system, you know, there are some typical job scheduler. Let's say a new job comes. Here it shows like the previous job. The red is running here, and these are the holes. Okay, and most of the scheduler will try to fill those holes. Okay, because they want the supercomputer, the throughput to be also to be high. So now if you see this blue job, irrespective of whatever you design, like your broadcast algorithm, reduce, all reduce kind of thing, now depending on how they got distributed, your algorithm need not be optimal. Whatever you decided, you might have the best algorithm, but on real system, it will not run. Okay, so this is the problem we are trying to resolve. So to solve this, what we try to do is called topology aware. So that means once the job is launched, the question is, can we actually get the topology information, okay, in the beginning of the run? And based on that run, we adapt internally. And we determine whether the algorithm 1 will run, or 2 will run, or 3 will run, which is best for, or very close to optimal to that topology. Okay? So we have actually done, we have worked with TAC on the InfiniBand. If you know, there is an OpenSM, which is the subnet management framework. Using those, we can actually extract those topology information. And using that topology information, here it shows some numbers, like let's say gather, you can see, especially for large messages, compared to the default topology aware, you will get like a 54%, 22% kind of things with 296 processes. And here we did some analytical analysis. As the number of racks in the system keeps on increasing, there is a higher chance that your jobs will get much more distributed. And using your topology aware techniques, you in fact improve much more better and better. Okay, so that's the kind of things what we have published here in a CAC 2010 paper, and I'm just putting all the papers here. All these papers are available from our website. So if you want to see the details, please feel free to download and take a look at all these things. Yes.
If you're going to go with more than a few thousand nodes, OpenSem you do not want to burden OpenSem.
No, so this is, I didn't go into details. It's not like directly you are trying to activate. So there is you take some very static topology information. Okay, so you are not like trying to inject packets at a dynamic. Okay, and then based on the initial topology, you can actually trying to see on which racks they are running. That's all. That is the only information we need. And then you just extract that information.
And do you work with schedulers and vendors?
That we have not integrated yet. So this is like just the TAC SG is running. So that is the second phase of the project where we want to actually feed these to the scheduler, so that the scheduler also can be more intelligent and trying to do the scheduling problem. We have not done that.
This is empty complete problem.
Pardon me?
This is empty complete problem.
That's correct. Yeah. So always, I mean, these are all like what I said is we need not get the optimal solution, but it will be near optimal kind of thing. That's what we are trying to trying to target for. Any other questions here? So that is the gather scatter I showed. So same thing we have done like for a broadcast. So this is the paper we presented in the cluster conference. So here you see like similar we can internally change, let's say your broadcast algorithm, whether it is the best on a depth first search tree or a breadth first tree, and we get around like 14% improvement here. So the next thing what we are working is power aware collectives. And again, you mentioned a lot of things about power that is becoming very important. Now what we are trying to solve here is that if you think of collectives, and especially very dense collectives like an all-to-all, okay? So when it is running on a very large scale system, because these are dense collective operation, it will take some time to finish. So now the question is typically the MPI stack is designed with always polling in mind. So the processors are continuously polling for new data to come, and that's what consumes a lot of power. So what we have done is, of course, there are techniques like DVFS where you can trying to dynamically change the voltage and the frequency, but we are trying to take that information into account to design newer algorithms. Okay? In a way, very short way, I can show that let's say there are 32 cores in the system. If all 32 cores start injecting messages for all to all, obviously all of them will not get done. Okay? So what we do is we define into phases. Okay? So in one phase might be what we can do is we allow 16 processes to go forward, while the other 16 processes we reduce their voltage and frequency. Okay? And then in the second phase we change them. So in that way, we are actually trying to save power and at the same time trying to do a best compromise on the performance. Okay? Here it shows some of these numbers. We had this ICPB 2010 paper. Here it actually shows this is on a 64 processes. You can gain almost like 32% of your power, okay, just during the all-to-all. Okay? Whereas your all-to-all performance may also get negatively affected. Here it is showing a negative 5% degradation, but what we are gaining in power. So it is left to then the user how you want to balance your performance versus power. But if we go into very large scale systems, so here we gain, in fact, the energy also like very significant, like around 30% kind of things we gain. So that is only we started with one collectives, and we want to extend to that all other collectives. Then only we can put them as like a package, and then put it into our software stack, so that actually people can try to use. So then it is the collective offload. I think Rich talked a lot about some of these numbers. I have a very quick animation here to show how the Mellanox core direct works. So here you can think of like the adapters are becoming very intelligent. In all my classes, I say like these are executives and secretaries. Okay, so just like executive offload things to the secretaries, so in the latest generation Mellanox card, you can also offload the collectives. Okay, so here it shows like let's say you create a task list, you just give it to the adapter, and then the adapter is actually trying to do all the remaining operations. So here it is waiting for some data to come, and then after that it continuously sends the data. So now you can see the user or the processor is not involved at all. Okay, and then you wait for the second piece of data, and then again send the remaining data. So what it does actually, it provides a mechanism for us to design non-blocking collectives. Okay, so that is the new kind of non-blocking collectives which is being discussed in the MPI3 forum. The earlier all the block collectives were blocking. So that means once you initiate a collective, everybody is waiting. They are not able to move or progress with the computation. So what we try to address two things: how we can design non-blocking, but the more important thing is how we can change the applications to have real overlap while the collective is going on. Otherwise, you don't really see the benefit. Okay, and then if we can change the application together with non-blocking collectives, what is the overall benefit? So this is the kind of things what we are doing the research. So here we published this paper last year at the ISC conference. So here what we did is it is a non-blocking all-to-all, and we took a P3D FFT application, which is a important kernel, gets used in many applications, and we actually rearrange the code so that not only you do initiate a non-blocking all-to-all, you move some amount of computations to do while the all-to-all is taking place. And if you see this with 64 or 128 processes, these are like the blocking. This is like a host-based non-blocking thing, and this is the actual offload. That's the red line. So if you see here, we have significant, like almost 17% performance benefit for the end application. And that's what is important. So we are trying to do non-blocking and at the same time also trying to overlap the computation with connectors. Then we did this paper at the Hot Interconnect. Last year we presented this, the HPL, high performance link pack. As you know, it's used for most of the top 500 systems. So we tried to exploit more overlap there using the non-blocking broadcast. And here we see like almost 4.5% benefits in the HPL runs we can get. Okay? Even though like 4.5% is tiny, those of you who know about HPL, it is a huge thing for a very large scale system. If you want to gain 4.5% more, we are not putting any additional resources. It's the same amount of resources using changing the broadcast from blocking to non-blocking and changing the HPL to exploit additional overlap. And then finally, recently we have done the all reduce operation, the same thing, non-blocking, and we have changed, we have taken this pre-conditioned conjugate gradient ECG solver. This is a application runs at the Lawrence Livermore. And with this, using the same technique, here we are showing like up to 512 processes, you can gain almost 21% benefits in terms of the overall performance. And this paper has just been accepted to be presented at the IPDPS 12. So through this, as I mentioned, we are trying to show not only just what we can do within the software libraries, but how they can actually interact with the application and trying to deliver the best performance. Any questions here?
I have a question. In curve, it's raised linearly, and then you go to a kind of plateau when you reach 258.
Yeah, so that is actually a characteristic of the application. Like this is the different problem sizes. So this is the problem size, we took it for like 512. So now for a larger scale application, we need to, there are like these weaker scaling applications, stronger scaling applications, so that's what we see. Okay. So let me move forward and then let me touch base at the GPUs and accelerator. This is becoming very important. So how do we actually really make these things work together within the clusters, let's say with Infiniband? So as most of you know, like let's say a lot of clusters are being deployed with GPU and Infiniband. And the thing is, how do you really move data from this GPU buffer to the other GPU buffer? And there have been like previously there was some work, GPU Direct, which was a collaboration between NVIDIA and Mellanox. But still, GPU communication, they try to avoid one copy here, but still it is very hard. Okay, so let me go through some animation and explain this thing. So let's say very sample code, which a lot of programmers do using GPU. So basically, at the sender, they do a CUDA mem copy. Then then they do a MPI send, and then finally they need to do a CUDA mem copy to get the data. It's a very simple way of programming, CUDA and then IB. So what we call this is like a high productivity but poor performance. Very quickly you can run an application, but you will not get performance because you are trying to do a lot of copies. Now there are intelligent application scientists who do much more advanced stuff, and the way they try to do is like at the sender, if you have a huge amount of data to be sent, what they do is they try to do some pipelining copy. Okay? So they use the copy like CUDA mem async copy, and then continuously send this data. So they are trying to do, the end application scientist is trying to actually write this kind of stuff to interact with the MPI library, and then finally you do wait all and then get the data. And we call this is a high performance. Obviously you can get good performance, but it's a poor productivity. The end scientist or engineer, they should focus on their domain. They should not be like looking at what CUDA does or what MPI library does and then try to optimize. Okay? So what we tried to ask the question saying, can we actually do this within the MPI library? Okay, so that is totally transparent. The end user doesn't have to worry. The end user, just like was writing MPI send receive program, they can use the same thing, MPI send receive, but where the data is from the GPU buffer. In that way, it will be much more productivity for the end users. And this we actually have worked on, and I'll show you how we have done this. So the same thing, let's say you see MPI send, you say the buffer from the device, and what we do is we do everything within the library itself. Similar operations, but now we can do much more intelligently because within the library we know, like MPI library, when to send the data, when to get the acknowledgements, how to optimize, what is the best pipeline all those kind of things we can do, and the end user just have to write 2 lines. That's all. Okay? And this is the kind of things we say high performance and high productivity. Okay? And how do we do that? Actually, CUDA 4 actually helps us. The CUDA 4, if some of you know, it actually has something called unified virtual addressing. So now the MPI library can actually distinguish, saying whether the buffer is in the host memory or is the buffer is in the CUDA, the GPU memory. And then we try to do this overlap of the CUDA copy and the RDMA transfer. And once we showed some initial studies, like this was on the ISC 11 last year, we put this result. So here it says this is the basic one, like let's say this is the time with GPU Direct and this is without GPU Direct. This is the naive scheme, and this is what the intelligent user can do, and our technique actually even does better than that. Okay? So once we showed these results, actually NVIDIA had discussion with us. They provided us some funding, saying can you really take this solution and then push it into the MRAPIS 2? And then that's what we have done recently. And we have extended that to not just for point-to-point, two-sided, but one-sided collectives, communication with data types. So all those, these are the detailed papers. So we made this release last week. If you are in our announcement list, you might have got a note. So this supports all these things. In addition to that, now there is a new trend where you are trying to put multiple GPUs per node. Okay? And there also there is a CUDA 4.1 introduces something called IPC, and we have taken that also into account into our MPI library. So this provides a lot of like a complete solution now for the end users to actually use our library to get the best benefits. Now while we are trying to do this, we also saw that a lot of people don't know all these issues, where the time is going, how much overhead. And as you know, we, in addition to our library, we also have something called a OSU micro benchmark, has latency, bandwidth, bidirectional bandwidth, some collectives, all those tests. And we also introduced some new tests for people to actually evaluate all these things. Okay? So you can do actually by selecting data movement between device to device, device to host, host to device, those kind of stuff. And that also we continuously improve. As we improve the library, we also give the benchmark so that you can actually try it out yourself. Okay? So I'll show some numbers here. So this is like we have taken the same micro benchmark and compared the GPU support between MRAPIS 2 and OpenMPI. So these are the 2 libraries, you might be familiar. So this is trying to show like device to device, inter-node, as the message size increases. So this is the latency, so the lower is better, and this is the bandwidth, and this is the bidirectional bandwidth, is the higher is better. Okay? So you can take these and then compare now different libraries and see which library is the best for you. So this is again device to host, similar kind of things. And this is device to device, intra-node. As I said, like if you have multiple GPUs, how we can take advantage of using IPC. So here I'm trying to show these results, showing that as we move to the exascale, not only just the GPU, as the Intel Mic architecture is also coming, we need these kind of techniques to make sure that not only we deliver high performance within the MPI library, but end users don't have to really bother with all these details, so that they can try to write their applications and get the best benefit. And that will be a big challenge as we move forward. Any questions here?
Yeah, are you getting any money out of it?
It's an open source.
Yeah, I know it's an open source.
Give me some.
You're competing with OpenAI.
No,
No, I just wonder.
No,
I
this
know
is-
it's coming from Ohio State. So.
no, Ohio State doesn't pay me anything. No, they take rather money from me. Okay?
Oh, okay.
No, this is like, we
No,
get
not
funding
from
like NSF, DOE, a lot of companies like Mellon's funds, NVIDIA funds. So a lot of these. Our target has been, we get it funding, whatever the funding get, we push it out to the community. So that has been the motto of this project. Okay? Any other questions here? So let me move to the, there are like some applications. So here we see like application end, like if you use the MRAPIS to 1.7 and 1.82. So this is the lattice Boltzmann methods. As you can see, if you use the huge amount of data, we get almost like application level. We can give you 20%, 23% benefit. This is the AWP ODC, which is a seismic applications, earthquake analysis applications. again, we can give you like an application level 12 to 13% benefit if you use these new techniques. So let me quickly take the PGAS support, and then I'll move to the enterprise stuff. So PGAS support, again, as we say, like there's a lot of discussion going on saying UPC, X10 or whatever, like the global arrays, all those things will be coming, and people have been talking hybrid programming models, okay? But then what is happening is there is no real hybrid runtime there. People compare apples and oranges. You see a paper, somebody showing MPI does better than UPC, or some other paper you will see UPC does better than MPI. They are using two different runtimes, okay? Two different runtimes, two different way application has been coded. You cannot really make any sense out of those numbers. So what we try to do is we ask the question, can we try to unify? Okay, because let's say MAP is 2, we have done a lot of work on optimizing MPI for InfiniBand. Can we deliver the same kind of things to the UPC, or rather put them together? It's a unified runtime. Then people can use this runtime to write MPI program, to write to UPC program, or you can also write MPI plus UPC program, okay, which no other runtime can give you. Okay, so that's what we have done. This is a unified runtime. Like instead of having MPI or UPC, we put it together. And here there's some micro benchmarks numbers, and here basically, if you take a look at this chart, here it would say that like this is the GasNet, which doesn't have a very good scalability, memory scalability I talked about. But now with the unified runtime, this is the red line, you will see that you will get good performance as well as the memory scalability. And here we took some applications, like these are the standard NAS benchmarks, and here you can see that this is the unified runtime, which is the blue line, that actually delivers the best, equal or better than the other. But the more important one, which I stressed, is that you can actually now write hybrid programs. A lot of people are talking, but there is no runtime yet. Like hybrid means within the node you do UPC, outside you do MPI. Okay, that's the kind of model some people think that will really allow us to reach to exascale, and you cannot do with pure GasNet or pure MPI library. You have to unify, and this is exactly the runtime tries to give you that. Okay, and here if you see this is an NAS FT, we rewrote with hybrid, and then here you can see that compared to any of the basic solution, this hybrid actually gives you the best. And now you can actually say that this is a unified runtime, so whatever performance comparisons we are doing, these are apples to apples, not apples to oranges. Okay, and if you give this unified runtime, let the users write their applications and see which model is the best for their applications, and in that way they can move forward. Any questions here on this part? Okay, so how much time I have? Almost 5 minutes. Okay. So let's. So this is like a just. So this is the kind of our roadmap we have been working on, like trying to take a look at this 2019 exascale, and then seeing all these challenges, and then trying to solve each one of them. And once we get matured solution kind of things, and we try to push that into the to our MPI stack. But now let me change the gear. So I think these are all new stuff. So the question here is that, since we have done a lot of research on the MPI for the last 12 years, so we have started asking questions saying how this knowledge can benefit the cloud computing, or let's say Hadoop or Memcached or any of those things. Okay, because that is the new trend which is coming. So this is trying to draw a lot of interest from all these Oracle, IBM, Google and all. Performance in the enterprise domain remains a concern. So we started asking the question, where do these bottlenecks lie? And can we really do some high performance designs? Okay. And so if you take a look at, so these are the Open Fabric stacks. Some of you might be familiar. These are all sockets based protocol, 110, 40 gig IP over IP, TOE. Then here there are SDP solutions. Then in the extreme end is the IVVerse solution. So currently people are running these enterprise applications mostly in this domain, and we wanted to push them to this domain. Okay. So this is trying to represent in a different manner. Like current designs are like this. People are trying to put some accelerated sockets here, trying to improve. But what we ask the question, they are saying that, can we, just like the MPI library we have done, can we have a OISU design which directly runs our verse? Okay, so that means whatever is the network, we deliver the performance there. And that's what we have been doing. Currently the study, by the way, IBM gave us some funding here to do the work. Okay. So let's see how these numbers are coming. So this is a Memcached architecture. Some of you might be knowing this is very commonly used on the enterprise layers, like this is the Memcached server. So the idea is that you take memory from all these different nodes and that try to aggregate. So this is a distributed caching layer. It allows to aggregate separate memory from multiple nodes and typically used to cache database queries. And it's a scalable model, but typically it is very usage, very network intensive. So we designed our module, and this module can actually work with any Memcached version. So we are not changing Memcached. The same calls are there. So what we are trying to do is we have done a native IB verse level design, and then we have evaluated with this Memcached server, and I'll show you some numbers. So here it says like this is a Memcached gate latency for small messages, and then we had two clusters. One is a DDR cluster and another is a QDR cluster. So here if you see, this is a GIGI number. This is the IP over IB. This is SDP. This is 10 GIGI. And then with our OSU design, we had two designs. One with RC and UD. They are always the best. Okay. So here if you see, like it is the 4 bytes latency, we can get like with a QDR, we can go around 4.28, even 2 kilobytes, we can do around 8.19 seconds. So we get almost like a factor of 4 improvement compared to the 10 GIGI solution. If you look at a large message like a Memcached set latency, the similar trends we see. I don't want to go into details. You'll have access to the slides. We see almost like a factor of 2 improvement here. Then if you see the transactions per second, see these huge bars. These are the OSU design, because we are trying to take it to the lowest level. So we can actually push these transactions very high, and also this is the same, thousands of transactions. We went up to 1,000 clients, and then we get very high numbers. And also, just like in the MPI design we had done, hybrid things I mentioned, like between RC and UD, we applied the same techniques here. And then we can actually get not only performance, but very reduced memory footprint, whereas all other solutions consume a lot of memory. And we took not just the micro benchmarks, there is something called a Olio benchmarks. A lot of people use to evaluate Memcached designs. So there also we perform very good. Here if you see, these are the numbers. Here are the numbers, this is the time. So these are our designs. The hybrid design is here, trying to do very well. Then here we actually work together with Yahoo. So they actually, of course, couldn't give us their internal design, but they tried to help us to design a synthetic benchmark which mimics their advertisement things, whatever they work on. That is their bread and butter. So we took the similar kind of workload here and trying to deliver. You see, compared to the other solutions, we are able to reduce the time significantly, almost like 12x improvement we are able to deliver. So the same techniques also we try to take it to the HBase. If some of you know, HBase is like an open source database project based on the Hadoop. And there are like different components here. And first we try to analyze, saying all these HBase, where the time actually is going. Okay, so here we try to do 1 GIGI, IP over IP, 10 GIGI. So if you see this top line, this is exactly the communication which is happening. Everything below, these are like server time, client processing, they are more or less same, whatever protocol stack you use. So we try to actually reduce the communication time, and this is the OSU design. Here if you see, we have been reducing that steadily from here to here. So almost here you get a factor of 6 improvement compared to the 10 GIGI. So this is like the basic analysis. Here we did a single server multi-client results. So here you can see this is ops per second, this is the time. You can see the lower is the better here and higher is the better here. So we are able to reduce the time and significantly push the ops per second, around 27% improvement. And this is a Yahoo Cloud Service benchmark. That is again a common benchmark people use. So here you can see the similar kind of things. It is a read-write workload, and we are able to reduce the time. Both are the time. So this is the write latency and this is the read latency. So almost up to 128 clients, we get around 40 to 42% improvement. So we just had a paper accepted for IPDPS, so we'll show all the detailed results there. And then very recently, we have taken the very lowest layer of the Hadoop, which is the SDFS. And then we ask the question, can we optimize that? If we can optimize that, everything else will get optimized. Okay? And so this is the lowest HDFS layer. These are very preliminary results. In fact, my students sent me all these results 2 hours before. I integrated them, they are working very hard. So these are the very initial numbers we have. So here if you see almost this is in megabytes. So this is a 1 gigabyte data transfer. So this is like happening on the 1 gigi, this is IP over IP 10 gigi. This is the IP level design. Okay, this is again a preliminary numbers, this is not the best numbers. We are trying to still optimize, and we will see that in fact we'll be able to, just like the Memcache D and HBase, we'll be able to significantly improve. But here itself, it shows almost like 20% benefits compared to IP over IP and 13% over IP. Okay. So with this, let me conclude here. What I try to show is that InfiniBand with RDMA is emerging, and we have been, especially for the scientific side, we have been working almost for last 12 years to improve on all these designs. And the next phase is actually all these, the enterprise applications. And I showed you some initial numbers, how the techniques can be taken to the enterprise domain to optimize it, but it will take us few more years to actually iron out all the solutions. In that way, we should be able to, even like when we are talking about supercomputers with exascale, not only just the scientific applications will be running, but very large data analytics can also run. Okay? So with this, I'd like to close. These are all the standard logos. I am bound to show this in every talk. But the more importantly, these are all my students and staff over the last 10 years who do the real work. I just come here and talk, so I need to really salute them for their hard work. So with this, I'll close, and then if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take.